So, Reverend James, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you very much.
And thank you, everybody, for staying for this workshop. I know the Sunday can get pretty long, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun and exciting. So Josh is going to get us soon. First we're going to start off. Let's start off by prayer and meditation and the candle. I really like this candle. So let's start off with a prayer. Let's inhale, audibly exhale. And we are so grateful for this space, for this community, for these wonderful people, and for these inspirational ideas, some of which I brought, many of which you've brought, and some of the most wonderful we will find out during the workshop. I know many of you are at home, and let's all be aware that for our true selves, there is no time and space. That no matter when or where you are, when you see this, it is now. It is happening now for you. It's happening now for us. And I'm going to invite you to do all the exercises along with us and follow along. And that way you'll get all the power, all the benefit, and all the inspiration that everybody in this room gets. And all the love. We can feel your love from here, whether it's in the future or in distant places, and we can all really feel the love in the room, where we have this magnificent building with these beautiful stained glass windows and barefoot Jesus everywhere I look. And we affirm this. We affirm a beautiful afternoon in the name and through the power of the Spirit of living truth. Amen. Let's start off with sort of a medium-length meditation. So I'm going to do a couple of different meditations during the workshop, just because I find not only does it help us with our consciousness, but it helps to try different kinds of meditations. Because sometimes, I've been teaching meditation for many years, and often I get people who've learned to meditate and have stopped doing it. And they stop doing it because they only learned one kind of meditation, and that kind isn't working for them. And so I teach 20 kinds of meditation, so that if one doesn't work, you can keep on trying new ones until you find one that does. So we're not going to do 20 today. But let's start off by inhaling and exhale. And let's rest comfortably in our seats. Let's bring our awareness to our feet. And just feel them. Are they cold? Are they tingling? Are they warm? They're about as far away from our head as they can be and still be attached. And our hands. And let's bring our awareness to our hands and just acknowledge them. They do so much for us. Are a vital part of our physicality. And now let's move our awareness into our heart, our hearts. We think with our hearts. Our brain extends. Our brain has some parts in our head, our spine, our hearts, our gut. But in the heart, we can feel the love. To make this more real, see if you can picture somebody or something who you unconditionally love. It could be a pet. It could be a grandchild or grandparent. or somebody who you have just read about. But feeling that person in your heart, feel the gratitude for their existence. Feel the unconditional love shared between you and them, or that you have for them. And as we move deeper into that love, let's just allow it to expand. Expand so it fills our whole chest and our whole bodies, and moves out around us to now it's moving into your neighbor's space, and you can feel your neighbor's love moving into you. And now it fills the whole church. And everybody watching it on YouTube or Facebook Live, whether now or in the future, the love is eternal and everywhere present. And let it expand even further to encompass our whole planet. And as God did with Noah, we can feel the love cleansing the planet. We can feel the shadows being illuminated. We can feel peace, love, and compassion upwelling from the planet. Part and parcel and integral to us. And notice that there's no place where you stop and love begins. We're integral to it. It is us, and we are it. We can swim in it. We can fly through it. We can rest in it. And now slowly bring your attention back to your physical self. Knowing that love beyond time and space remains enfolding and comforting our world and our community and our loved ones and all of us. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. So the first story I want to tell is the Bhagavad Gita. The Vedantas were holy books written in Egypt about the time of the Hebrew scriptures. So about the time of Bathsheba, the Vedantas were written, but the Bhagavad Gita was written a few centuries later. And it does for the Vedanta what Bathsheba did for the Hebrew scriptures. It gives it meaning, it gives it purpose, it makes it personal in our lives. And it does so more. Bathsheba did it in a real storyteller sense, where she changed the story so that there was more meaning and purpose, and she made the stories comforting to the people in her life and the people in her kingdom. And by our good luck, that was so valuable to people throughout time that those stories are still around for us to tell now. The Bhagavad Gita has the same power in Hindu society. And Josh, do we have my Gita slides? There they are. So, this is a battlefield. The way the story starts, there are two families, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And they are, in fact, related. But Arjuna is our hero, and Krishna is the incarnation of God who's going to be speaking with him. And just so you know, Unity believes that we can all be incarnations of God. We become aware of it rather than it's something that's happening. In this case, Krishna has blue skin, so you can tell in the picture who it is who's the incarnation of God. But here's the battlefield. It's the evil cousin Duryodhana. Duryodhana holds the throne illegally. And Arjuna is a general in his family, and it's his job to defeat the Kauravas in battle. But these are his uncles and his cousins. These are very dear to him and much beloved by him. But yet, the evil side of his family is doing great harm to the world, to the kingdom. And this is an analogy to our mind. The Arjuna represents our spiritual thoughts and, us being here to be what we have come here to be. And the Kauravas are our bad old habits, selfishness, greed, thoughtlessness. And we don't really want to embark on a war against them because we've known them for so long, and we've known them our whole lives. They helped us survive when we needed them. But now they're getting in the way, and they're causing destruction, worldwide destruction, because people are driven by these ego desires instead of by their higher selves. So that's what the battlefield is. On the left side, so there's a chariot, and I don't know if you can tell, but Arjuna is in the chariot, and Krishna is there. He's sort of blue and glowing. Not to fling my head so much. He's in the chariot, and Duryodhana was also faithful to God, and they both prayed to Krishna. And Krishna came and gave them a choice. You can either have the best weapons, the best soldiers, the best material things for you, or you can have my guidance. And Duryodhana quickly said, I want the best of everything. Material things, that's me, and I want them all. And Arjuna said, there's no question, I need you, Krishna. So this is the choice of our inner guidance over material things. And I know the Fillmore says it isn't a choice. We can have material things, but we don't have them through greed. We don't steal them from other people. We have them through it's God's good pleasure to give us what we need and to make sure we have what we need, and we're good stewards of our property. That's why the story is clear. Duryodhana and the Kauravas are using these for ill. they're exploiting people, they're taking over the kingdom, and they're not being good stewards. So let's do the next slide. So you can see Arjuna is on the left talking to Krishna, and you can see Krishna's got the blue skin and the halo. This was in the 400s. This was around the time of the rebuilding of the temple, but in India they didn't think much about that. And this is where Krishna is giving him a choice of material wealth or guidance. And so let's do the next slide. And so Krishna now is guiding the chariot. And this is what we all want, is to be able to contact our inner guidance. I think that's why I like to start off with a meditation, is so that it's so easy to get stuck with like thoughts and memes and just like whatever's running through our head. And it's nice to consciously choose what I'm going to follow, what I'm going to pay attention to. In fact, Hinduism, one reason, so the Fillmores went to the first Parliament of World Religions back in the 1800s, and they met Vivekananda, who told them all about Hinduism. And Hinduism, as expressed by the Bhagavad Gita, is very similar to unity. And this may be by design. It may be that Charles and Myrtle saw it and met Vivekananda and said, he's got it. This is what we're teaching. So who knows, we may actually be an offshoot of Hinduism in some sense. But what Hinduism believes is that there are actually three main beliefs about how the world exists. One is the materialistic view, which is that all there is material, what you can see, what you can feel. And there's a creationist view, which is that God made all this stuff here and then sort of withdrew to some other place, and things are happening. And we're all part of the emanationist world, where we believe that we are all unified with the one spirit, and we can feel the one spirit in our world. It's present in everybody. It's not just, so it's Hinduism and unity, Chinese Taoism, Buddhism, all have this belief. But let's get back to the story. So let's do the next slide. So you can see this is Arjuna and Krishna with the chariots in between all the armies. It's sort of wonderful. It's sort of Dr. Seuss style art. Which is nice because this is a very serious thing. I mean, in the story, a lot of people are about to die. In our interpretation of the story, this is our bad thoughts and habits that are going to drop away as we move into our, what we've come here to be instead of what ends up mistakenly manifesting as our content, as the thoughts that can lead us to do ego desires instead of moving, to what we want. There's a happiness researcher who talks about why don't we want what we like? And I really like that concept, that if we just go with our ego desires, often we'll end up doing things that make us feel bad or leave us in a bad place or unhealthy. And what we like, we like getting together with our friends. We like how we feel after we exercise. We like, a lot of things but we don't want them. So this is something that I've actually been working on. I think it's something we can all work on, is to figure out what it is we like and then figure out how to make us want to do that so that it's easier for us to do that. 5 or 6 days a week, I go running in the morning. And I'd say half of the time, the last thing I want to do is go out barefoot in the cold, in the rain, in the mud, and run when I could just stay in bed or something. But when I go out, within a couple minutes, I'm like happier. I'm happy as a bird, just flying along, and the cold is embracing and energizing, and the birds are tweeting, and the other runners are passing me, and so how do we get to want what we like? And this is what Arjuna's question is. So in the middle of the battlefield, let's go to the next slide, Joshua. This, I don't know how well you can see, but there are gods hovering overhead. It looks like a couple of women gods on the outside, and Shiva is the one. There are the three major. Hinduism has lots and lots of gods, but there are three main gods, and the gods manifest in all kinds of different forms, which is why it seems like there are so many. They've sort of combined archetypes and religious beliefs together. Shiva has 3 heads, and Shiva is the god of destruction. So the 3 gods, Brahma is the god of creation, Vishnu is the god of presence, and Shiva is the god of destruction. And the way life works is, in truth, we live in an unchanging, our true selves are unchanging and out of time, out of space. But the world, everything deteriorates, but new things grow. And so Shiva gets the old things out of the way so that the new Brahma can create new things that will grow. So you can see the gods watching. And then let's do the next slide, Josh. This one is Christian. It's Mother Mary. You can see she's wearing a crown, and she's got a big glowing heart. She exemplifies the feminine principle, all-encompassing love. And so I actually put this in because it's a little too warlike. You can see everyone's getting ready for battle. Everybody's eager for battle. And Krishna and Arjuna are having that whole thing. Let's do the next slide. There is our body in presumably a lot of you know about the Hindu chakras. This shows the chakras illuminating. And the chakras are energy centers that go up the spine to the crown of the head. And the crown one in the chakra belief, connects you to spirit, but each of the chakras does something valuable for you. The heart chakra, the one that's a third eye is like extra vision. Spiritual vision. It lets you see things in a spiritual manner. And let's do the next one. Atman is, the Hindus talk about Atman, and I'll read this to you because I don't know, my eyesight isn't good enough to read it from there. One pigeon says, "What are some other words for Atman?" And then the pigeon with a professor hat says, Atman is soul, it's spirit, it's psyche, it's the self, inner being. It can be thought of as life force, vital force, individuality, our makeup, or the subconscious. We would actually talk about it as a superconscious. But it's sort of that invisible part of ourselves that connects us and really runs and drives the body. It's Arjuna is wanting to follow his Atman, follow his higher self. So let's get to the next slide. Back to the story. Arjuna, this, luckily for peace-loving me, we've skipped over the battle. I'll tell you, Krishna and Arjuna win. That those guys don't have a chance because, the spirit of the universe is guiding Arjuna's every move. Arjuna asked Krishna not just to see him in his human self, but to see him in his sort of worldwide self, to see him, his true self. And this is one of two pictures I have of this. You can see there are snakes. You can see the full love of the universe. You can see there's death because, this is part of Shiva, part of moving things die so new things can be born. I don't know whether snakes in India, in Greek tradition, snakes represent knowledge and wisdom. And of course, the snake in the Garden of Eden is sort of a tricky character. I'm actually not sure what snakes probably represent in India something Shiva-like, because I think India is full of poison snakes. So snakes are a way to clear out. There's fire breath. It's sort of in the middle of the picture is that orange tube is Krishna's breathing fire. And there's another one over his main face at the top right. He's got orange skin and is breathing fire next to someone who has green skin. So what this represents is that we connect to one aspect of spirit, to the part that we are most in accord with, that's most helpful to us. But there is a whole lot to spirit. One day, in Job 38, if you ever want to read a description of the Middle Eastern God, of the Jewish God as this kind of spirit, there are 4 chapters of Job where God talks to Job about, where were you when I slew the Leviathan? Can you wall up the water and keep it from overflowing the earth? Creation is a big, powerful thing. And we're part of it. We're an important part of it, and it manifests for us in love and truth. But it isn't all donuts and cookie dough. There's a whole lot to life. And then let's do the next slide. So there are the 3 gods. The one with 3 heads is Brahma, the creator, the creation god. And then the one in the middle is Krishna, as Vishnu incarnating as Krishna, and that is the god of the present, the presence. And then the one, the barefooted one on the left has a little trident, and that is Shiva, that's the destroyer god. So, next slide. Oh yeah, the ultimate solution, it's not those who lack energy nor those who refrain from action, but those who work without expecting reward, who attain the goal of meditation. Theirs is true renunciation. And this is one of the powerful repeated messages of the Bhagavad Gita. If you follow these practices just for yourself, how do I want to say this? If you meditate because you want peace of mind, meditation will have some power. But you get even more meditation, you get even more power if you follow the practices without needing there to be a goal. It's sort of like if you want something too badly, if someone's too desperate for something, they'll push it away. And so it's the idea that you'll get peace from meditation. And so you meditate, And then when you don't get peaceful, you just let it go. You're like, oh, no peace today. You don't get frustrated because of the lack of peace. You just know that you're following the process. It's a stochastic process. Things will eventually come. And part of it is that it's a complicated life. One of the things my teacher used to say is, if you're going to wash things off with water, what gets clean? You take your hose to wash your car. What gets clean first? The inside of the hose. And so all the mud that's in the hose is the first thing that comes out. And so as you meditate, sometimes that's why, all these crazy thoughts come out. It's just being washed out by the purifying water. Back to Noah. Let's do the next slide. This is just another one of Arjuna asking Krishna to guide him. I like it partly because I really like that on the left and the right, all those chariots really look like they're from a Dr. Seuss cartoon. Dr. Seuss, if there was reincarnation, he was reincarnated from one of these Indian artists or inspired by them, because it is just the same style. But also that this is important. One of the meditations, Krishna talks to Arjuna about two kinds of meditation. One is where you try to still your thoughts, quiet the mind, get the mind to pay attention. And this is what we mostly learn. The other kind is the kind where you put your awareness on the presence of spirit. And you try to keep your awareness on the presence of spirit, even as you move through life and do other things and continue in other activities. And you find your awareness is drawn away and you bring it back. This is one of my favorite Christian practices. There's a book written, I think, of almost 100 years ago called Practicing the Presence. And it's something a lot of Christian saints and mystics like to do, is just feel like everything you're doing for spirit. You can feel spirit, loving and beloved within you as you do your everyday practice. So that is Arjuna doing that. Next slide, please. This is the last one. I like this one because it has Ganesh there. Ganesh is the elephant-faced god. Ganesh is a really useful one because Ganesh is the remover of obstacles. So if you're trying to do something and it's not happening, think of Ganesh. Ganesh is there to remove all your obstacles. And Ganesh, of course, is just a Hindu archetype. It's an aspect of God that we can look at. That is, how we connect with spirit is all highly individual. That's mostly what I've got with that. The next story I want to tell you, it involves this bottle of ash, and this is Mount Mazama ash, and I've got written on it 5678 BCE. So Mount Mazama, Crater Lake used to be Mount Mazama 7,678 years ago, and it blew up. And it created Crater Lake, but what it also did was it created about anywhere from 8 inches to 2 or 3 feet of volcanic ash all over the Northwest. And where I got this bottle and why I know about it is because my son's an archaeologist. And when archaeologists are digging to find out how old things are in the Northwest, at some point they will find the Mount Mazama ash that got blown up from Mount Mazama 7,500 years ago. And that's when they know, they can stop digging. They've got all of recorded history. But But this was the Noah story for a lot of the Northwest tribes. They have the two Noah stories. They've got Lake Montana broke and flooded all of Washington State and some of Oregon. And we hear that in folk tales from around here. And Mount Mazama covered everything with a foot or more of ash. And you hear tales of that from like Oregon, Northern California, Washington. Mount Mazama made a big pile of ash. And the reason I bring it up partly because my son really helps me live. Part of what we're doing is we're living in two worlds. Archaeologists, when they walk through the world, they see the world as it is now and the world as it was like in the past, in 1922 and 1822. He was in downtown Seattle. They were trying to dig an office building, and they came up with a bone, and they couldn't tell whether it was a deer bone or a person bone. And so they brought him in to find out. And it was a deer bone. And he was standing in the middle of downtown, all this traffic going by, and he could see and feel that 150 years ago it was a field where deer were running and would sit in the grass. And as we go through life, we live in a world of eternity, a world of pure love, timelessness, placelessness, and this actual physical world that we live in with all our wonderful friends. What I think, I've been talking for a long time, and I want to get to your Play-Doh and art supplies. What I invite you to do is to think about where in your life, or what the story of the Bhagavad Gita means to you. Is there a situation in your life where you're choosing between material goods and spiritual self? Are there people in your life, or are there thoughts in your life who are making that choice between materiality or spirituality? Or in your world, it doesn't have to be in your life. You could see it as, some people think that there are politicians who could be represented by the evil Duryodhana, who's only looking, who isn't looking out for all the people, but just looking out for number one. So if you can, the reason I wanted to have Play-Doh and the clipboard, the paper and magic marker, is our artistic brain, we have brains all over our body, I was saying, that there's a brain in our head that we use a lot, our neocortex and our mammalian brain. And then we have our brain in our heart that we spent a little time focusing on. And then there's a brain in our gut, which is sort of our creative brain. And by being artistic, artistry gets us out of our linear view of the world into our artistic view. Actually, another way I want to say this is Professor Jill Bolt Taylor. I don't know how many people have seen My Stroke of Insight, her TED Talk about getting a stroke. I see some nodding heads, but I see some non-nodding heads, so I'm going to give you my favorite story, because I love this woman. She was a professor of neurology. She studied brains and how they worked. And she worked at a lab with people like her who were studying the same thing. And one day she got up and she was having a stroke. And she was watching her brain shut off. It was a part of her brain that could then... So there's a creative part of the brain and there's a logical part of the brain. And she got to watch the logical part of her brain shut down. And she knew that this can kill you. So what she did was she dialed the number of her lab, which she remembered. And it's a good thing she did it so quickly, because after she hit the last number, she had lost her speech center. She didn't know what numbers were anymore. So she knew that there were such a thing as numbers and that they were there on the thing, but she didn't know what to do with them or what the number of her lab was. And somebody picked up the phone, and she heard them talking, but she had no longer had the ability to speak. And so she just made sounds like, oh! But they recognized her voice, and they had caller ID, so they knew what number it was. And because they were brain researchers, they thought, oh my God, Professor Bolt Taylor has had a stroke. And they sent an ambulance, and she went to the hospital, and it took her years to recover. But she was highly motivated to recover. In fact, for her, something like that, which you would think would be awful, is like almost a high point of her life because it pointed her to this whole new world of brain research and brain understanding. So after she dialed and before the ambulance came, she was leaning against the wall. So she had an arm on the wall, and she couldn't tell the difference. She couldn't tell where her arm ended and the wall began. So she was she was very aware that she was not just her body. And there was this tidal wave of love. She was just swimming in an ocean of unlimited, infinite love. And this was her existence. So what her experience and understanding is that our creative brains are always living in a world of timelessness and infinite love. And we just don't know because our logical brains have to shut that part down so that we can learn how to talk and do numbers. But if we can quiet down our logical brain for a minute, then that unconditional love will plow back in. And so this is part of living two worlds, like Arjuna's doing, is we're in the world of love and creativity and our world of logic and meaning. So, long-winded explanation as to, so if you can draw a picture or make something with Play-Doh that represents Arjuna in your life or Krishna in your life or chariots or any kind of meaning, creativity versus numeracy. Are there any questions? Or are you guys like ready to go and I'm just babbling on? Yes, please. Oh, let me give you a microphone. Yeah, Bolte Taylor. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's Jill, Bolte -Taylor.
Thank you.
Yeah, my stroke of insight. It's.
You're not on the camera here.
Oh, thank you.
So I'll just ask, I don't quite know what I'm making. Like, am I doing Play-Doh and newsprint?
I would take whichever one. Yeah, I'm giving you too many choices, huh?
Clear instructions.
Clear instructions. Okay. Well, it's tough. So I want you to make a work of art. Like, and I define any kind of scribble on the paper, any kind of character you can mold out of the Play-Doh as a work of art. Something that will activate your artistic brain about anything, on the Bhagavad Gita or even Noah's Ark, or King Solomon, or strokes, or creative selves. I have a bunch more stories to tell you. I was just thinking it's time for time for art. Any other questions? No, okay, good. That looks like an interesting work of art. Oh, you're not done. Sorry, I like their colors. It's like a Christmas tree. There's a lot of artistic talent here. That's true. This is a nice. Yeah, and for the people at home, we're being inspired by the beautiful colors and the stained glass, and it's sunny outside, so the sun is making the colors even brighter, radiating and giving us sunbeams to sit in. So let's aim for like 3 or 4 more minutes, if that works for people. people at home to, if you don't have Play-Doh, find a piece of paper and make a work of art. Even though I didn't instruct you before, you can pause this and do it. That you get as much benefit from participating in the artistic part of it as anybody in the room. Minute and a half more. Okay, does anybody, so what I've seen walking around, I almost want to have an art show, but does anybody have anything that they're interested in, like, lifting up and sharing with people? Oh, you do? Oh, good.
So I'm gonna grab one.
So I used to be creative. I think it still lives within me. When I was in kindergarten, they rated me the most creative. That's the last time I got that kind of rating. But these moments, I'm very analytical, for those of you who know me. These moments give me that piece back. So I captured materiality versus spirituality from your comments, James, and I thought about the Noah's Ark story. And so I created a purple ark. You know, unity is purple. So a purple ark, and then I had somebody else's color green. And so I made two little animals, you know, like in pairs that go in the ark. And then on the page itself, it shows just waves and a couple of birds flying around. And for me, the materiality is the ark itself, and you know, the need to keep the material animals fed and our material-based needs met. You know, shelter, not drowning in the endless seas of water. But then the spiritual component of that to me was more like, okay, well, they don't know how long they're going to be floating around in the endless sea, and they don't know where they are, where they're going to land, what the world will ever be like. They're just in this floating sea of unknowing. So what's left but faith and oneness? So.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Oh, good. David.
I have to follow up with that because I'm not an artist and I've never been accused of being one. So for me, what I kind of saw from this whole experience or this today is recognizing that there's a light and there's a darkness. There's a path for either side that we can follow. We can make the choice to follow the material things, or we can make the choice to follow the spiritual things. And for me, for certain, my choice was to follow the spiritual path, but it was a long, long journey. So in what I did with this is this little pink thing right here is all of the Play-Doh I used. So I just drew a line, and basically it was a separation between my past self and my present self. And in my past self, I lived in an internal prison that I created for myself. I locked myself in depression. I locked myself in loneliness. I locked myself away from the spirit of my higher consciousness. And so the little pink path represents my spiritual journey, and pink is a feminine color, and I'm in touch with my feminine self. So that was my path out. And my path out led me to God. It led me to spirituality. It led me to a new life. It led me to peace. It led me to truth. It led me to freedom. It led me to God. It led me to light. It led me to oneness. And this right here, I put a little lake in there, and it's Lake Ho'oponopono, which is just understanding that I have to love myself, forgive myself, embrace that divine within me. And so it is.
Anyone else?
I've got one hand, and it's my hand that's broken.
Come over here so we'll have you on the camera.
So I had to use the pen to do my designs on it. But this is removing the block obstacles in my life. It's my elephant. But
Oh, Ganesh,
did you see it? Can you see it without me tipping?
I can hold it too.
I'm going to drop it on the ground. It's going to fall. But there he is. He's removing my thing. He's going to remove all the blocks in my life. I'm going to go there. I'm going to make it. He's removing all of the obstacles. We're going to get rid of those. That's wonderful to know about that. And then the other thing is I had to write my notes. Hang on. The Krishna, the one with the picture with the love, the undying love and the unlimited love. Someone gave me that tapestry years ago, and I never knew what it meant. And I have it, and I'm building a cabin so that I can take in more homeless people, and I'm going to put the tapestry in the cabin. It'll be beautiful.
Thank you. One more? Carl.
Okay, so this is me. I always wanted to color my hair, and I always got stopped with like, oh God, people are going to think I'm, trying to be, egotistical or silly or something. And I just went with my heart and did it, and it felt really good. And I'm a quirky person. I'm kind of all about emotions. I'm not very analytical at all. I go with my gut and my heart, and being in unity, it's been just path. It's furthering myself along the path of self-knowledge, of spirituality, of growth, personal growth, and of real true happiness. And this is just another step along the way of that. And I am an artist, and I do art, and I do, craft, woodcraft, and that is another way that I express. All those are ways that I express what's inside. And so I just got this. That's what I got from the story, is going with your heart, is not going with what's out there, what's on the outside world, but just looking inside speaking to your heart, and through that, listening to the Spirit, listening to God. So.
Thank you, everybody. And I know the people who we didn't hear from have wonderful stories and works of art, but we move on. The next story I want to tell is about is Buddhist. Tibet, from 500 AD to AD, CE, from 500 to 1000, so from 1500 to 1000 years ago, Tibet was a military conquering nation. The Tibetan plateau is a couple of miles high, and so the Tibetan armies would train up there, and they were tough, and they had horses where they could march in, and when they were treated back home, the other soldiers who were not used to being 2 miles high, one, when they climbed up, they'd get ambushed, and two, there wasn't enough air for them to breathe when they were all the way on the top of the plateau. And so they had trouble. So for 500 years, China paid tribute every year to Tibet for the privilege of not having the Tibetans attack them. So 1,000 years ago and 1,500 years ago, Tibet was a very warlike country, and it was very successful by being a warlike country. They were achieving, all their dreams. But the emperor of Tibet, at some point, 850, I believe, the year 850, 700s, so even before that, he wanted his nation to have a religion. All the other nations had religions, and he thought this would be a good thing. Tibetans were already masters of war. They were very prosperous from all the money they were collecting from China. They wanted a religion, and they picked Buddhism. And the first Buddhist guy they picked tried to build a Buddhist temple, but it kept getting destroyed, and they said it was destroyed by the local gods, by the gods of the area. Demons, they called them. And so he called Padmasambhava. And how many of you, the Buddha relics are something that have toured through the Northwest a few times. Has anybody gone to see them? Oh, a few people. Okay, good. For the rest of you, they have relics. They have physical pieces of Buddhist saints, bodhisattvas, like something from the actual Buddha's body and his son. And Padmasambhava is one of them too. That's where I learned about him and learned all about the Tibetan Buddhists. Padmasambhava was like a superhero. He came up from his monastery in India, and when he met the demons, what he did was he taught the demons about karma and about Buddhism, and that they could be happy if they followed the path of loving kindness and compassion. He taught them mudita, and I want to teach you guys mudita too. I think you practice it already. You probably have a different name. It's the opposite of Schadenfreude. Do people know Schadenfreude? That's a German word for like laughing when other people are unhappy, laughing at the misery of others. Mudita is feeling happy at the well-being of others. When you see something nice happening to someone, you're happy. And the nice thing about mudita is that you have so much more opportunity to be happy. There are like 7 billion people, and if any one of them are happy and you find out, you're happy. I mean, you're really increasing your odds here. So Padmasambhava went to the demons and he taught them how Buddhism could make them happier and save their lives. And they all converted and became Buddhist. And it's funny, actually, this is something where I didn't think of it in time to get PowerPoint slides, but one day I'll show you. The pictures of the Tibetan gods are these fierce dragon-looking things. They look like they're ready to kill you, but all they want is for you to be happy. And it's because they started off being these fierce things, and then Padmasambhava taught them, if you're nice to other people, then the world will be nice to you. So that's Padmasambhava. Actually, Princess Enlightenment was part of his deal too. Princess Yeshe Tsogyal. She was part of the harem of the emperor of Tibet, who called Padmasambhava to come and make Tibet Buddhist. And Padmasambhava, after he trained all the demons to be nice, went back to India, where things were a little calmer, or one supposes. And Princess Yeshe Tsogyal was sort of the leading voice of Buddhism then in Tibet. So they had their feminist moment. The Dalai Lama was first incarnated in 1400, and this is something we remember from our history. In China and in Europe, there was a big war between religion and secular rulers. And in China and in Europe, the secular rulers won. There wasn't, at some point, the Pope in Rome was like the leader of Europe, but not by the 1400s, even though they still had religious wars for centuries. In Tibet, the religion won. It's the only place in the world where they said, we can defeat all these other countries, but does it make us happy? Buddhism makes us happy, and it makes everyone prosperous, and it makes life better. So Tibet at that point became, it had the Dalai Lama, and the story is, whenever the Dalai Lama dies, he arranges to be reincarnated as somebody in the area, and when they find that person, they teach him to be the Dalai Lama, and he continues on. And this has sort of been interrupted because China invaded, and the Tibetans didn't have much of an army anymore. But the Dalai Lama, the benefit of this to us is that the Dalai Lama and Tibetan Buddhists, instead of being an insular religion and instead of just having their own religious country, they bring this to everybody. And this is, in some ways, this is the benefits that COVID has brought to us. Instead of just having our religion in church, we have it in our living room. We can go to church service in our bathrobe, in our pajamas, eat breakfast and have coffee while we're doing church. And I encourage people who are doing that to still participate. It's not like a TV show. It's like a cooperative. We play along. When we sing the songs, sing along with us. When we do the art along with us. So there's a Tibetan, I'm going to roll in the mudita with the 5 senses meditation. But we got a little taste of the mudita when I did the heart meditation, when you felt, whoever it was you loved in your heart. That's a sense of it, because you're feeling the love, and it's not for you, it is for this being that is beloved by you. There's a Yiddish word for it, kavel, and kavel just means, it's specifically the love that a grandparent feels for their grandchild. But it's also the love that a teacher feels for their student, or a minister for the parishioners, or any of this kind of unconditional love that you see, that we experience all the time in the world. And it's so nice, we want to experience it more. But so the 5 senses meditation, we do it with our eyes open. And this is something you can do when you're in the line at the grocery store and somebody's taking too long, so you have too long to wait. You can look at your phone, or you can do a 5 senses meditation. So let's just inhale and exhale. And just allow your eyes to gently see what they're seeing. And now notice what your ears are hearing. Feel the breath coming in. Or feel the seat, feel the chair you're sitting in. Or the pressure on the soles of your feet. See if there's any taste in your mouth. And see what kind of smells you detect. And then back to sight. Just allow yourself to notice. And if any thoughts come while you're engaged in your senses, just thank the thoughts and get back to your hearing. Notice what you're hearing, the echoing of church. Notice the feeling of yourself on a surface. Notice any smells that are coming in. And is there any taste in your mouth? And what are your eyes seeing now? And what's the musical quality to that tone that's going around the church? Does it feel like gravity is embracing you and hugging you close to the seat and the floor? And is there any taste in your mouth? And what do you see now? Are you seeing something beautiful? Something helpful? Something someone put a lot of heart and effort into? Is that the sound of silence, or the sound of the church, or your neighbor? It smells nice up here. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? And now just allowing ourselves to return to our thoughts. With practice, the five senses meditation can become, you can stop being yourself and just be your senses. You have so much awareness of your senses that you don't notice you don't notice any thoughts coming to mind. Or if you do, they sort of pass through uncommented on. But it's a nice meditation if you're in a noisy, this is beautiful having such a quiet place for it, but you can do any kind of meditation when it's quiet. It's a nice one for when you're on the bus or in some sort of situation where you need to pay attention in line at motor vehicles. You can't be closing your eyes and bringing your attention inside, but you still want to meditate and quiet the mind and calm yourself and bring that kind of attention. Mudita works too there, though, because you can think loving thoughts about everybody who you see in line. And it's another way to, I'd say, like the hose that gets cleaned when you run water through it, when you're thinking that, it's nice to have people who think highly of you around you, but really you're the first one who benefits. The lovingness benefits you, and then it benefits everybody else. I trained forever ago I'm a certified trainer for the Sedona method, which is a way of releasing emotions. And the person who invented it, Lester Levinson, had always struggled his whole life to be loved. And one day he noticed that being loved wasn't getting him. It's a matter of how can you want what you like? What he liked is being loving. What he liked was loving things and loving people. And being loved was sort of a side effect of that. So he learned to like loving rather than like being loved, and then he got more love back in return because he was focused on the right activity. Or, as Krishna would say, you just love without regard to whether you get love back or not. Parents actually know this, I think, a lot. As often you have kids, or I mean anybody, if you know somebody who like is in your life and is just not wanting to return love, but you still benefit from loving them. You can see all their features and benefits. You can still be wise and have discernment about what you do and don't give them, but you get the benefit of the love. So that's mudita. It's something Tibetans did, and Padmasambhava used it to conquer a bunch of demons. This is something actually that I wonder about and people talk about is, what does that mean? Is that like a mythical thing? What really happened? What we know happened in history is Padmasambhava, they tried to make Tibet Buddhist, and it didn't work until Padmasambhava came. And whether he talked to actual dragon demons, which, being brought up in this day and age, I want to believe it, and I have a hard time really believing it, or whether he just found people who were like so not wanting to be, the priests of the old dragons and demons, and the people who benefited from the old gods, the warlike gods, and he just convinced them that Buddhism was the way. He just went straight to the people who were most resistant, because they were the ones with the energy, and they were the ones that had the power to, once they stopped being resistant, once they saw that this was going to benefit everybody, then they just were full force behind it. So, never mind, it's not a mystery. I do like thinking about the dragons, though. I want to talk about a Northwest myth, and it actually impacts me and my family. So it's about crows. Actually, I have another survey. Does anybody here like crows? Oh, a lot of crow likers. Anybody here dislike crows? No crow haters. Okay, that's good. Anyone neutral? Maybe. Okay, some neutral people. Oh, good. Oh, yeah, they do that. So I didn't really care about crows at all until about 15 years ago. My cousin from England came and told us that the Tierney family had a 1,000-year-old alliance with crows. And what happened is 1,000 years ago, the Tierney, my great, whatever, how many greats grandfather, was the tyrant. He was in charge of this tiny little wet, windswept kingdom in Donegal, Ireland, in the far northwest corner of Ireland. And one day, he and all his fellow clan were asleep. They'd had a big party the night before, and they were out. And suddenly, they woke up with all this loud crow noise. And what was going on? Their enemy clan was going to attack and kill them in their sleep. So they woke up and they drove off the enemy clan, and the Tierney clan leaders said, "We are loyal to you. You saved our clan. We are grateful, and we will be friends for the rest of history." And 1,000 years later, my cousin told me this, and I'm like, I guess I got to be crow allies. Now, the crows in Ireland don't quite look like, they look mostly like the crows here, except they've got white feathers on the back of their neck. but they act like crows do. And it's because, corvids is the family, and it's like cardinals and jays and crows and ravens. And they're about as smart as second graders. And so it's interesting when I see, there have been a lot of crows in my life, and when I see them talking to each other and talking to me, I think about second graders. And I think second graders, they may not be able to do calculus, but they can do a lot. They can work together, they can find food, they can be creative. They made dogs into their pets, and the dogs will knock over garbage cans to free up some food for them. So there is a Northwest Coast Native myth about raven or crow is a trickster. And this is a Haida myth, but it's not just the Haida. I think a lot of the other tribes like raven. So raven cares a lot about people, but is like a little greedy and selfish, self-aggrandizing, a lot like us. He's more of an Arjuna than a Krishna. He's trying. He's not trying quite as hard as Arjuna, but he's definitely not a Duranya. He's only a little self-interested. So raven transformed the world. The story is the whole world was dark, inky, pitchy, all-consuming dark, blacker than 1,000 stormy winter midnights, blacker than anything anywhere has been. The reason for this blackness has to do with the old man in the house by the river who had a box which contained a box, which contained a box, which contained a box, an infinite number of boxes, each nestled in a box slightly smaller than itself. Until finally there was a box so small, all it could contain is all the light in the universe. So in the story, the old man hides the light because he's afraid to see his daughter. In a ploy to steal the light, Raven shrinks himself to become a hemlock needle in a basket of drinking water, so the daughter swallows him. Soon Raven is reborn from her as a raven/human child. The old man accepts him as a grandson, and soon Raven begins begging that he opens the boxes, each time pleading and crying until the old man yields. When the old man finally opens the box containing the light, Raven grabs it and flies out of the house, causing the light to spread throughout the world, and revealing that the old man's daughter is as beautiful as the fronds of a hemlock tree. As Raven flies away with the light, Eagle sees him and tries to steal the light. And how many of you know this about eagles? They really want whatever you have, if you're a bird, causing Raven to drop some of it, which become the moon and the stars. So that's why there are moon and stars and the sun. So Raven's a good guy in Northwest myth. My godson actually is part of he is a crow hater, and his father is, and his grandfather is. And he's a real example of why people could be crow haters. Because crows are always playing dirty tricks on them. Crapping on their cars, stealing things from them, swooping down at them. But they're always being mean to the crows, throwing stones at them, yelling at them, stealing their food. And I pointed out to my godson on a few occasions that if he's nice to the crows, you don't have to feed them very often for all to be forgiven. If you stop being bad to them and start being nice to them, really within a week they will be your best friends. But he's not interested because his father and his grandfather both have assured him that crows are no good, and he's continuing a family feud. One day, my plan now is to talk to Dad and see if I can convince Dad. But I don't know how seriously can you take this? But I think it's a lesson to all of us that if we do have an enemy, one of my first sermon in seminary was love your enemies. And it's because one of my friends who's going to a different seminary at Seattle University started loving her enemies. And I noticed that anytime I love my enemy, they aren't my enemy anymore. They're like somebody who I love, even whether or not they love me back. And so then I sort of lose enemies, but it's nice. I sort of clear out the enemies in my life. It was very handy in the dog-eat-dog engineering world that I used to spend all my time in. Oh, so there's a story that I want us to interpret. And it's pretty simple, but I think I wanted to pick a simple one because it will help, because then the focus isn't on the story, it's on the interpretation. And it's the sort of nursery rhyme. Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after. But what I want you to do is get in groups. I wonder if all of you on that side of the room can get in a group, or get in any kind of groups you want to be in, a group of like 4 to 6 people. And if it's one more or less, then that'll work. But to talk about what kind of meaning do you get? What kind of meaning can you give that story? This is what Bathsheba did. She took stories that were going on in her environment, and she found how they had meaning and purpose to them. And it doesn't have to be, so I'll give you my mom's example of what she saw as a story. Actually, no, do you need an example? I think you've had lots of story interpretation. I bet you can come up with a better story. So if you can turn around and gather in groups, maybe talk about it for 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, and then we can share what kind of meaning we found. And at home, if there's anybody with you, you can do it too, or you can come up with a meaning by yourself. And when you do come up with a meaning, write it down. Done. Does anyone need more time, you guys? Okay, minute more. Are you guys done too? So, which group wants to? Are you guys done? Yes. Okay. Close enough. Who wants to share their evaluation, their storyizing of Jack and Jill? Go for it. Oh, is it a skit? Oh, this is so cool.
We're gonna act it out. No, you, because you got all the notes.
Oh my gosh.
You got all the notes.
Okay. So there was many interpretations from this we found. Okay, so Jack and Bill.
Yes. Woo!
Or Jackie and Jill.
We haven't decided. We didn't narrow that part down. We're seeking, so fighting the uphill battle of life. Jack had a struggle with ego and fell. Bill had empathy and followed. But we found the crown was ego. For us, that was ego, and water was life, and the uphill part, the normal battles of life. And then, Jill came tumbling down. We found that was empathy or codependence. We couldn't figure out which one.
I'm good. I'm
Beautiful.
gonna stand here for the next
Thank you.
wants the microphone.
Next group. People at home can email.
All of what they said, we were talking about going, the uphill battle, and we saw, or we talked about how water, at least in dream work, is the unconscious. So the subconscious, and doing that kind of work where you're going, into the subconscious and looking at your faults and that kind of thing is work. It's an uphill sort of battle to do that. And Jack breaks his crown, which is like the greatness. I am the top. I am the best. And he breaks that and tumbles down the hill, and the feminine, we're the feminine, just out of loyalty, sort of follows. That is something that we didn't hear.
So, and we had an idea of going up the hill and the water having to retrieve it uphill, was if it's the subconscious and it's an effort, that's the superconscious. We're really trying to get into the mind of God, and we're kind of blowing it. So the ego gets in the way, Jack gets hurt, and the masculine and the feminine, they have a lot of challenges, and they falter, but they keep getting up and getting the water from a faraway place.
All right. Power of battle, except for the happy ending. Next group.
Explanation, the ego going up spiritually. If you can get too lofty or too high in yourself, you're going to come tumbling down with your ego, and it can happen both to male or female, the feminine or the masculine side.
And do you guys have a representative?
He basically came up with the same thing
Same thing. Okay. There is something. My mom, when she did this exercise, came up with an explanation that I haven't heard from anybody before or since. Jack and Jill were going to get drunk, and the crown is Crown Royal. And they got drunk and broke the bottle and broke everything. And my mom actually had her life turned around by 12 steps, and so she had whenever anybody would come up with any story, she always had some kind of a holic's point of view of it. But it's funny. So my question is now, actually there are two things. One is that I said we'd do dream interpretation, but in fact, to do dream interpretation, we need a dream. So what I want to do instead is I want to give you a brief synopsis of what we would do for dream interpretation if we have a dream, and then if people want to go more into that, they can email me. We could start a Zoom group or something. We've done this before, and it's really fun. But the idea is you get a dream. The dream needs a title. When you give your dream a title, it helps you remember it. It really locks. You know how dreams, you wake up and the dream's so vivid and suddenly it goes away? If you give it a title, it won't go away. All your memory engrams will attach to the title. And then you can remember it. But you remember it more when you tell people about your dream, they ask you questions. And when they ask you questions about the dream, not about the interpretation, but about what happened, it fills in more detail. And then your dream is a real story. And then everybody who's listening gets to interpret the dream, what they would think the dream meant if it were their dream. So you can do that with stories too. Like you can say, if Jack and Jill were my story, what would it be about? Or if the Bhagavad Gita was I think we did, if the Bhagavad Gita was my story, what would it be about? We can do that with Bible stories. So what I'd like to finish up with is, how do we do this in our lives? What stories do we have that are active in our lives? And how are we making them more positive, or how do we make them more positive? And do we want to, it seems like these were pretty good groups. Do we want to go back into these groups and maybe everybody spends a couple minutes talking about how they can take the stories and add them, how you can take stories in your life and how you either are making them more positive or how you can make them more positive. Yeah? Okay. So back in the groups, and I'll be ready to talk about it in 5 minutes. Oh. I'll put this back. 2 more minutes. One more minute. Okay, who's ready to report out? I guess wrap up. Are you guys done? I think basically the class, we got to wrap up the class. So I want to honor your time. It's just about 2. Actually, it is just about 2. So who has stories that they want to tell to the rest of us? Not necessarily? I don't think I can hear you. Okay. Are we... Hello, So I want to honor your time, and it's like we got a couple minutes till 2. Do you guys have something to report out? Does anybody have something to report out to the whole group? Oh, is the sound not working? I'll just use my ballpark voice. Can you hear me now? A little bit. Okay. So it's just about 2, and I want to honor your time. Did anybody have anything especially noteworthy happening in your group about bringing the stories to your life? Anything that you want to talk about with the group or report out? Oh, yes. Okay. Here, can you pass the mic?
I think we came to the I think we just all agreed and came to the conclusion that story could be valuable in our life, and we could make it a positive story.
Yeah, positive. Yeah, exactly.
You know, and I gave an example of someone that I had not seen for a while, and I asked how this person was doing, and they said they were doing really good because they got a lot of hugs that day. And I was thinking that that's fantastic, but they could have also changed the story to give themselves as many hugs as they got that day.
And that makes sense, as many hugs. That's Paul Hasselbeck, one of the professors at Unity Institute, always says it's a beautiful day in my consciousness, because he lives in Kansas City and they don't get a bunch of real beautiful days. No, I'm sure the weather there's fine, but it's always a beautiful day in his consciousness, no matter what's happening outside. And you can always be full of hugs. Anyone else?
We talked about one thing I brought up was in being in AA, you tell your story. You tell your story and you listen to everybody else's story, and it ends up being that if you're hooked on drugs or alcohol, you reach a point, and it's called your bottom, and you have 2 ways to go, either down or up. And in that moment, it becomes the worst day of your life because you're at the bottom, but it's also the best day of your life because you're changing your direction. And that's a story that we all have in our lives through all sorts of difficulties, through all sorts of difficult situations. And I'm going to let you tell your story too. You're just a few of them, the hero here.
Oh.
The changing it
Okay.
to the hero.
Put me in a tough spot because I don't really like to talk. But, yeah, I was just talking about, the archetypes and how we can use each one of them to tell our story and to understand the stories of other people. Whether or not we're coming from, the victim or the hero or the healer, we can have different perspectives on our stories regardless of the facts of the story, and it's all the truth. It all is what it is. But just understanding how it can shift and change. And I just gave the example of coming from a place of victimhood for a lot of my life, and then being able to see it more as, a hero's journey, and being able to, connect to that higher self that really propelled me, out of that place. And I could see my life more from a place of, transcendence and evolution, and just kind of healing, the hurts that were contributing to that victim story.
Thank you. Both of those are powerful.
Actually, hello? Hi.
Hello.
Actually, I don't have a comment for this for myself, but because we're at the end of this and somebody asked a question of you quite a while back, and I said when I had the opportunity to ask, I would, and this is from Facebook Live. Sam asks, can you please spell the name of the Hindu teacher who influenced the Fillmores?
Oh, Vivekananda. So the Hindu teacher who influenced the Fillmores in the late 1800s was Vivekananda. Oh, no problem. So is that it? I want to end up the class. We're 5 minutes over, so I apologize for that. But it's because you guys are such a fascinating group, and I needed to give you more time to tell your stories to each other. And I so appreciated you coming to the story workshop. And I think that's it. Bring more stories in your life. Make sure you get the result from the stories you hear. And know when somebody tells a story, that is not the end of it. You can change stories. You can make them better. You can make them more helpful. You can make them more useful. You can bring them into your hearts if that is a story that is going to help you. And that's, I think, what the Fillmores and what we all would like stories to do is to be helpful, to be like stars we can follow that make our lives lead our lives into better places. So thanks for coming and enjoy. Looks like we've got a sunny day from what I can see.